Optimove, the leader in positionless marketing, frees marketing teams from the limitations of fixed roles, boosting campaign efficiency by 88%. Its positionless marketing platform delivers 3 transformative powers: data power for real-time customer insights, creative power for instant asset creation, and optimization power for self-optimizing campaigns. With Optimove, you can do anything and be everything. Go to optimove.com/total retail to get your first month free when buying Optimove's positionless marketing platform.
Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, the editor-in-chief of Total Retail, and I'm excited to be joined on today's episode by Chandhu Nair, who is the Senior Vice President of Technology at Lowe's. We're going to be speaking with Chandhu about the launch of Mylow, the first AI-powered home improvement virtual advisor. So that exciting development from Lowe's, and we'll talk about how that's going to improve both the customer experience as well as the employee experience for Lowe's shoppers. So thanks for joining me today, Chandhu.
Hey, thank you for having me, Joe. Excited to talk more about it.
Yeah, so let's jump right into it. I mentioned this exciting news, the launch of Mylow. Can you start by having giving an overview for our audience exactly what Mylow is?
Absolutely. Joe, it's like what you said. I mean, it's really is a first of a kind home improvement virtual advisor. So if you think about home improvement in general, all of us live in some sort of a dwelling. And usually you have so much information about everything else in your life except your home. So when it comes to solving problems in your home, which could be a leaky faucet or actually trying to do your raised garden bed for your spring project that is coming up, I mean, really, you don't have a lot of information about it. And we thought with generative AI coming into space, this is one of the white spaces that you can really address because it all starts with the expertise that is needed to actually do the project. So at Lowe's, we are really not about solving about a particular product for a situation, but it's really around solving the project, which really starts with how to do things. Then it goes to what products can help you do those things, and then it goes to how do you actually put all of those pieces together. So with Mylow, we are really trying to bring all of that piece together. It's really looking into all of the project expertise that we have as a brand that we've built over the last 100 years or so. And how do you democratize that? So think about it as a 24/7 Lowe's associate with yourself all the time.
So thank you for that. It gives a great base for the audience to a little bit or learn a little bit more of what Mylow is. With that, now that that's been established, let's talk a little bit about from the beginning why Mylow was designed. What was the need in the white space that you were trying to address? I think you mentioned that one of the goals of the organization is solving for the project, right? Not necessarily the individual product. Talk a little bit about how Milo's fits into that mission.
Absolutely. So at Lowe's, our mission is to really solve problems and fulfill the dreams for our customers' home. And when you think about the first part of it, which is really solving problems, which is kind of how I was sharing, it really requires that expertise to be made available on your fingertips. And that's where we started off. So as we looked at while AI is not new for Lowe's with generative AI and with the scale of deploying AI these days, we looked at how do we apply AI within the Lowe's landscape, and we created this framework around how we shop, which is really how the customers shop with Lowe's, how we sell, and then how we work. And as you looked at how customers shop with us, they are looking for solving, for their projects that they're undertaking in their house. It's the leaky faucet, it's the raised garden bed. It is actually how do you measure the dimensions in your kitchen? It could be very simple. And we see that across the board as customers are trying to search, as customers are trying to chat or talk to our associates. And we figured the best way to start is to really help address that customer problem. And we looked through all of our expertise documents, all of our sales and training documents that we have for our associates, and we started connecting that back to our product catalog. And then if you are like most of us would then read through all this stuff, would then go to a YouTube video and actually look at the video and say, how do I actually do this, right? So and at Lowe's, we also have a YouTube channel with about 1 million subscribers. So we brought all of these pieces together, which is all of these expertise, sales and training documents, our product catalog, and our how-to videos. So you can have it all at one place. And at the same time, you can then click from there and actually buy the products that actually will help you fulfill that project, if you will. So that's really was the start of it. It really is listening to our customers and our associates. In fact, we started doing a lot of field study with our associates to kind of say, hey, what are the kind of questions that you're getting? And given, obviously there is a seasonality to our business. We are in the middle of spring. And, when it comes to spring, what are the top questions that the customers are asking you? And how can we make it available, through this, generative AI based chat assistant or advisor to help you?
So one of the things you mentioned, Chandu, is that you kind of think of this as the 24/7 store associate available. It's in your pocket. Talk a little bit about where Milo will be available to shoppers. Is it app based? I guess first is that my question.
So Joe, if I can add to that, I think we started off putting it in our Lowe's.com on the desktop. So it's available for all of our Milo's rewards, which is our homeowner loyalty program. So if you go to Lowe's.com/Milo, you can actually access it. It's available on mobile web, and we just recently launched it on Lowe's app as well. So it's available across all of our digital properties. And we are also trying to now embed this into various points of our experience journey that the customer may have. Could be in the product pages where the context is around the product. It could be in an installation page where the context is about install. So the idea is wherever the customer is, we are making this associate available for you. Just like wherever the customer is in our store, our associate is coming to help you. And we are, you may have heard this, in our analyst investor conference, we announced our store companion. It's using the same technology, the same concept, but it's available 24/7, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and I was going to follow up about the in-store environment. So talk a little bit about that, and in particular, how your store associates may be able to leverage Milo. I would imagine it's a complement. They already have this product knowledge and consumer knowledge of the customer, but this is another tool that they can utilize to help to service your in-store shoppers as well.
Absolutely. I'll start with an example. I do store walks every week. It helps me keep grounded to what is the actual customer problem that the customers are asking our associates. And I was at a store 2 weeks ago where the customer came in and said, "Hey, I was actually looking for an oil filter for my lawnmower, and I could not. I was searching for it. And when you search for it, it was asking for." What is the model number? What is all the details? So it goes through a full conversational thing, and then the associate kind of pointed them to the Mylow, advisor, and you could go in there and basically ask it the same question. It'll come in with the specific oil filter that was needed for that model number, and that actually helps, bring in that confidence. Because in most cases, what you need, what the expertise is driving the customer to, is validation. It's the validation of, am I actually going the right steps? Because putting the wrong things in can be pretty expensive in a home, as you can imagine, right? So
Mhm.
so we try to bring that validation, and validation comes with questions and a conversation, than a list of links, right? That you would typically show. So that's really how we're kind of trying to bring that to the stores. We have empowered our, I mean, in our associates are really in the front lines helping our customers. And this tool we feel like is really creating superpowers for our associates as well. Because now, if you think about the next set of associates that's joining our stores, there is a lot of young demographic, young kids out of college who's coming to the store. I remember myself going to an electrical aisle and somebody coming me and asking me a question about something on the electrical aisle, and I would not really know what it is about, right? So, but if you're wearing the red vest, which I'm wearing one right now, and walking around the aisle, it gives you the confidence, the associate, that I can actually get that information, no matter how tenured you are. So you instantly take a new associate who joined Lowe's and give them the superpowers to be a 2 3 year old associate with that kind of experience or expertise behind you.
I want to talk a little bit about it, the internal process here. Obviously, as SVP of technology, you kind of coming at from the technology lens and the in incorporating the technology. But I imagine as you think about integrating your product catalog, working with your merchant team, I would imagine then you going onto the store layer, you're going store operations and in-store staff, your associates. Talk a little bit about how you all work together to roll out and across such a large footprint, right? Lowe's, is has got a massive physical footprint, your digital properties you talked about from desktop, mobile web, app, many different touch points. So quite an extensive process. Tell me a little bit about how you work through that process with so many different teams and try to create a cohesive experience for in the end for your customers and your associates.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you asked that, Joe. I think to me, AI is really 30% tech, and 70% of this is change management. So if you think about, and there is a lot of talk about models and data, and really, I think AI definitely connects the data and the models, but it's really about encoding the different processes. into this that actually makes it powerful, right? Whether that is the store ops or the merchant processes that is needed to do it. But when you encode the process, you need to actually reimagine the process with the new ways by which these systems work. To do that, I think one of the things that we had to do when we set off on this AI journey is set up an AI transformation office. And within that, every business, every initiative, AI initiative that we have is actually led by a business leader. So it's part of their plan. It is part of their annual operating plans. It is part of how they do their business. And what that does is it drives the accountability to drive the change, to reimagine the business process. It actually encodifies that business process into the tech. It actually makes the tech work much more beautifully because it's actually underpinning to the new process and the data and actually the customer experience or the associate experience that the business wants to drive. So that was a big part of how we are able to drive and move with agility. And there is a good amount of change management that is involved because there is communication that you have to give out to the field, say you are in the stores. There is communication that you have to give out to your merchants and your vendors. And it's better served when it's actually the pod structure that we have. The center of the pod is the business leader who's driving that change, and tech is enabling that change.
With any AI based tool or machine learning based tool, the more data, the better data that you can feed into it, theoretically, the better results you're going to get, right? And so, with that in mind, as this Mylow tools becomes available and it gets used more and more, collecting valuable data as that goes, I'm curious, Chandu, as you think about the conversational styles in which your customers, your shoppers are using Mylow, how will that be used to then help be able to field their questions and in turn, provide those relevant, useful responses? Because people may be using it to search for the same thing, but using different words or different, or they have a different project in mind for a different tool. Many different variations potentially there. Tell me how you can hopefully continue to provide those relevant, useful responses based in that conversational style.
Absolutely. So, Joe, I think with Milo, I think it's constantly looking for feedback. So, as you actually go through the conversation, for every response that we put out there, there is a thumbs up and a thumbs down button. So, if you do a thumbs up and a thumbs down button, we are consistently tracking that feedback and continuing to train and optimize the model based on that. So, every time that data point comes in, we look to say, hey, did we answer the question correctly? Was that information complete to complete the project? If it is not, what do we need to change or update differently? For example, as we go through different aspects of a particular product category, and if the information is not complete, where else can I go get that data so I can actually complete that? This has been something we've been obviously working with. It uses a combination of large language models, multiple large language models, so our own data sets and our own models and open AI. So we work across the spectrum to actually continue to gain feedback, append the right or augment the right kind of data sets to do it. The other thing that we also took precaution is, there is safety aspects to it. There is guardrails to be put into it. We don't want it to answer questions on world news, right? So we specifically, have guardrails working with NVIDIA and the Nemo guardrails to actually, prevent it from answering questions that's not relevant for our business and it's not really for us to answer about. And we continue to, evolve that as we learn through this feedback mechanism. So it's always, there's a team that is consistently on top of this as we look at our initial data sets. And the good news is the engagement has been really high. We are seeing multiple sets of questions in every conversation. And we continue to look at that conversation to say, is it completing the conversation? Is it actually tracking down to a project purchase or a basket purchase? And if it's not, how can we improve doing that?
You mentioned complete data sets, John Doe. Is that both what you're receiving from your supplier? So you're leveraging that supplier data as well, right? With your own customers are putting into the tool.
Absolutely. So it's looking at all of our product catalog data. If you look at
Mhm.
Lowe's.com site, there is a lot of how-to content data. So we use all of that. Our stores have a lot of training data. So it's a combination of all of these that we use to continuously, improve it. And as we always learn from the customers, as I say, so and every now and then a customer is asking something, and we realize that hey, that part of the data, we just need to connect that part of the data to make the project complete, and then we learn and evolve from there.
Are you integrating any external content? External, I say, thinking about like content that may be on a YouTube channel or a other social platforms. Is that being integrated into the Milo tool as well?
So we are integrating the Lowe's YouTube channel data because that is our branded marketing channel data is something that we are bringing in, but we are not obviously going in because we feel like over the 100 years as a brand and the expertise, and the data and the content that we have curated for every kind of home improvement problem that we have should be able to solve majority of your problems. And in fact, what we are one of the things that we look internally with the application is how much of our questions can be answered with the data that we have, how much can be the questions can be contained with the data that we have to answer the right questions. And it's a critical success measure that we keep ourselves for, because we have that data, and most times sometimes scattered, and we just need to get that data and get it all connected.
And connected and at the speed at which you can do that, right?
Yeah,
That's the real advantage that you're picking up here too, is that it's connecting multiple data points from different channels, but it's also doing it at an extremely fast pace that manually wouldn't be able to be even thought of being accomplished in.
absolutely, absolutely.
So thinking about Mylow being another example, it's just the latest example of Lowe's commitment to digital innovation, trying to think of ways that it continues to innovate and introduce tools and solutions that are improving the customer experience and your associate experience as well. Tell me a little bit about how that commitment is manifested across the organization. You talked really about, the balance between, it's technology that you're introducing, but it's really change management too. It's that people that you're the culture as well. I'd love to get your perspective there.
Absolutely. So I think we pride ourselves, in terms of being a tech forward retailer, and for that, it's not just about the technology stack. It's really around that culture that you just talked about, Joe. So a lot of this is, I'm thankful for our leadership team, in the sense all the way from our CEO Marvin, to our CIO and our CFO, to be able to make this top down and instill it across the organization. Like I said, when we created our AI strategy around how we shop, how we sell, how we work, we made sure that instead of going with a death by a thousand use cases, we picked on the top six, what we call as lighthouses, to go after, which drives the most value for our customers and for our business. And really being able to identify who are the right leaders to help drive that change across the organization. And that's really, Mylow is just one part of the equation. As you can imagine, when you think about solving problems, Mylow comes and helps you solve the problems. But the second part is really reimagining your homes and fulfilling the dream. So that requires inspiration. So we have Style Your Space, so on Lowe's.com, that you can use to actually design different spaces, which is a big part of how you reimagine your house. And the same applies for a lot of associate facing experiences, whether that is in store, we just talked about that, or if it's a merchant. So we have built digital twins for our stores, for our merchants to look at the layouts of the stores and create the right kind of planogramming, etc., in a completely different way. But that really requires both the business leaders and the technology leaders coming together and really kind of swimming in the right direction. And that a lot of that comes from kind of that, one, the top down alignment. Two is really around having a technology strategy that is anchored around this change management and business being at the center of the equation. And three is also driving AI literacy, which is really around, how do you continue to educate people on this technology, on this new way of applying technology to their function, and being able to help reimagine the process without having to be afraid of it, because there is a lot of news in the media. But the reality is, just like any other tool, it's really around how do you leverage the tool the right way. And a big part of our function is to also drive this huge literacy campaign in the organization. So tops down, it's not just about putting a tool out there and assuming that it's going to get used, but it's really helping them understand these tools and what it can drive value for their day-to-day business.
I'm glad you touched on kind of the prioritization piece because at an enterprise business such as Lowe's, there's probably many different competing priorities, right? And
Yeah.
competing departments for technology's time, your team's time, resources. And you also kind of want to, I imagine, balance, long-term innovation with also the short-term business needs, right? So there's like striking that right balance. Can you talk a little bit about your perspective as a technologist, how you think about competing priorities and that prioritization of where do we invest our time and resources first based upon short-term needs, but also we want to stay kind of at the cutting edge and we want to have long-term, innovation. So it's an interesting equilibrium that you kind of have to create. Tell us a little bit about that at Lowe's.
Yeah, absolutely. In general, I've been with the company for 4 years, Joe, and we have a pretty strong framework for how we prioritize our tech initiatives every year as we go through our annual operating plans, etc. And it's usually driven by the customer value, the business value, and obviously the investment that is needed to drive those, right? So there's a strong framework. So, and AI is not very different when it comes to it. It actually, I mean, a lot of the AI we're talking about is not now like, 4 to 5 years out. We're talking
Mhm.
about things that is, 6 to 9 months out. And you almost have to think about in that 6 to 9 month kind of window to say what drives value for the business. That's a big part of how we look at the framework. The two things that we do have to look into, one is, there is obviously additional risk factors that you do need to consider when we look at AI projects. So if it's really what's the value, what is the investment that is needed. You also need to look at two more dimensions. One is what is the risk that is involved in trying to do that, because AI is a pretty nascent technology, so we need to look into that factors. And the fourth dimension that you need to look into is what is the change readiness for that line of business to take a technology like that. If that change readiness is not there, we should probably not be investing in that. We should prioritize something else that can drive immediate value. And then you have to kind of take and say, hey, what is needed to drive that, drive up that change readiness. So it's I've been told this kind of will and skill framework. So it is the willingness to do things, and it's the skill to do things. You can have all the skill to do things, but if the willingness is not there,
Mhm.
it's not worth the investment. So then the question is, how do you drive the willingness? If you have the willingness and you don't have the skill, it's mostly technology and the skills that needs to come in. So you kind of use a combination of those to kind of prioritize across those things. But it is not a separate framework. It is tied to the overall technology framework. So you're looking both at the here and now, what I call is really kind of transforming the power grid, and then where do I need to add new power stations so we can really create more power in the whole grid.
Very detailed answer, and I appreciate that, Chandu. And thinking about customer value, business value, and obviously the investment cost, and having that framework built into your decision making, obviously, super critical and able to then produce tools that are out there, such as Milo, that is adding value in multiple places.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mylow is just one of the very many we have in the works, and excited to kind of, I mean, really, as you said, I think as you think about that customer value, if you start attacking that problem and really create value, it drives loyalty, which is why it's a big part of our loyalty program, and then that we believe will continue to drive business growth.
Well, I want to take the opportunity to thank Chandhu Nair, who again is the Senior Vice President of Technology at Lowe's, for joining us on this episode of Total Retail Talks. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I've learned a lot about your newest innovation, Mylow, and how it is improving the experience at Lowe's. Thanks for taking the time for joining me, Chandhu.
Likewise, thanks for having me, Joe. Love the conversation.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at mytotalretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Talks.
Optimove, the leader in positionless marketing, empowers marketers to instantly deliver real-time personalization. Boosting campaign efficiency by 88%, it allows marketers to do anything and be everything. Go to optimove.com/total retail to get your first month free when buying Optimove's positionless marketing platform.